Hey, so welcome back. Welcome, David.
Hey, brother.
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good.
All right. It's good to be back. Sorry, we're 5 minutes late. It's called fashionably late, as I like to call it. We have today's going to be a little bit of fun. We're going to have a lot of fun for a couple reasons. One of which is we were sitting here having a conversation before we got on with our guest, and Patrick Reilly. We're going to bring him on from the beginning, have him go through some things. He'll stay as long as he can. But he's a former Navy journalist. He spent years traveling the country and attending MAGA events. He's a liberal, calls himself a liberal. I saw an interview, or not an interview, but a video that he did where he was getting, I guess, blasted for going and doing an interview with someone that was conservative. And he's like, yeah, so? And I was like, this is our guy. We got to get him on. And so he graciously accepted. He's come out pretty strong and talked about the J6ers. So we're gonna talk a little bit about all of that. But David, and then we're gonna talk a little bit about what's happening with the stock market and a bunch of other stuff. All this and more today on Untamed. Untamed is going to be untamed. It's going to be a little crazy. I want to talk to my people. I want to talk to my brothers and sisters. We can have grace and humility in how we interact with other people.
Oh, hot dog, look at you.
And nobody talks about what's really happening.
And let's have conversations about what truth is. What's up?
All right, let's get started. Let's do this. Let's not waste any more time.
Hey, Patrick, welcome to the show. We got Patrick. There he is.
This should be interesting. I'm not a stranger to having conversations with people I strongly disagree with, so I don't think this is going to be new, but it might be new for some of your audience, and for that, I'm kind of excited.
Well, let me ask the question right out the gate, because a lot of our discussions are probably going to be based on labels, or at least the perceived definition of, and we don't want to straw man anyone here, but when you mention liberal, what does liberal mean to you?
I think being a liberal, for me, means, I think the government can and should do what it can and should to make people's lives better. I don't think that means you have to have a heavy hand and pick winners and losers. But I do believe in New Deal programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and welfare. I think that we should take care of those, the least among us. I know that's a Christian value that you guys share. So, I think that the Republican Party, for me, if we're talking about traditional conservatism, is a little bit. I would, if I'm going to go a little too far, I would say that all they care about is maybe putting out fires and putting criminals in jail, and that's all the government should do. But no, I think we should build roads and bridges. I think we should take care of people who can't take care of themselves. There are a million other issues. I'm pro-choice. We could go issue by issue, but I fall squarely on the left.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, because I mean, one of the things that I think the left does, and I'm not attributing this to you, is
I might.
Well, no, I mean, like, I think we probably talk more shit about the uniparty Republicans. And it's not to say that we aren't conservative. I'm definitely a free market guy. I think there's a place to care for those that are underprivileged and all those things. But the one thing that I think we've got a bigger problem with on the right is the hypocrisy. So it's not like we're flinching from being conservative. It's just that I haven't seen a great representation of what conservatism really looks like on the right. And so I think what you're going to find is that we're probably going to agree to trash the right, but probably for different reasons.
Yeah, I don't think I would. I would not trash. I don't trash people. I think leadership has completely disconnected themselves from most of America. right? So we've gotten stuck behind this idea that social issues are the things that are most important to people. And actually, all the things that you started off talking about, Patrick, were things related to social consciousness. So, which is that it's not we're not abortion's not the number one thing on the list of Americans. Opportunity is, right? Not having food deserts and education deserts and making sure that the poorest among us, over 80%, or it was over 80%. I don't know what it is now, but back in 2017, they ran a survey of who gives more, the left or the right, and over 80% of the giving that is done for the homeless and for social programs is done by conservatives. And so I think it's antithetical to what they say about what the left and the right says and what the left and right does. But I think people are a little bit more complicated than left or right, which is why we talk so heavily about Democrats and Republicans being the uniparty, at least in leadership.
Oh, I think you have part of that right. Maybe I wasn't clear enough in the beginning, or I didn't articulate it correctly. I think there are a lot of economic issues that make me a liberal too. I think that honestly, the idea of supply side trickle down economics, Reaganomics, and all this stuff is nonsense to me. I think it favors the rich. It really screws the working class. And I think that the reason that we are so obsessed with social issues in this country now, and I think that we vote on social issues almost exclusively now, because the Republican
tell us
Party
that. Hold on,
somewhere.
Patrick, they tell us that, but in reality, we haven't had free and fair election for 25, 30 years.
All right, but let me just finish the point I was going to make. Is that I think that we vote on social issues because the Republican Party somewhere in the early 70s, somewhere around the Nixon era with the Southern strategy, decided that, hey, look, our economic policies of trickle down and supply side economics really don't do anything for the working class. So the best way we can get working class votes is to lean into social issues, right? And the problem with that is that if you do that, you have to make it more and more extreme every year. Like, you can't just say, "Hey, look, we don't think gay marriage is a good idea." Back in 2004, that was an effective wedge issue for Karl Rove, George Bush, and the Republicans, right? And they won Ohio and won the presidency based on that. 20 years later, Donald Trump can't just say, "Hey, we don't think gay marriage is a good idea." He's telling you that your gay teachers are trying to cut off your kid's cock, right? I mean, it has to get more and more extreme, or else it doesn't work anymore, right? It's almost like a gateway drug, right? The stuff that got you high when you were in high school doesn't quite do it 10 years later, so you have to keep adding to it, right? And that's why I think we've gotten more and more extreme and more crazy.
Or the world has gotten more extreme and more crazy, because I'll push back. In the 1990s, early 2000s, there wasn't a big platform, left or right, people talking about transgender issues or chemical castration. So
it didn't exist.
Well, exactly. So, but it exists now. So, I mean, I don't think that's like I don't think that's an aspect of someone in a Republican laboratory saying, let's really push this issue out and create it out of thin air. I think one of the
I think it is. I really do. I think that it's an effective way to motivate people who otherwise get screwed by your economic policies. So you got to do it, because if I try and sell to a working class guy in West Virginia that, hey, we're going to cut your boss's taxes so that maybe he might hire some more people or give you a raise, that's a piss poor argument, right? But if I say, hey, these Democrats, they want to trans your kids, or they want to molest your children, or they want to make them gay, well, that's going to get people fired up. So it's effective, but it's really toxic.
But I think what's coming through though is because I fundamentally reject the premise that you're talking about, and it's not what you think. Like, I think that there's so much political theater and talking points that we've been sold kind of this, political science mumbo jumbo for so long, when, as Joe pointed out, I think our elections are so compromised that it lends a veneer that what you're saying has truth to it. I don't think the issues of trans or gay rights has really been the driving force, or even abortion for that matter. I think someone has control of the infrastructure, and it's the uniparty, and it's the same tyrants, Bushes.
Well, to be really
Clintons.
clear, I don't care about that issue like at all. Anytime someone wants to talk to me about trans or whatever, I'm like, man, I care about economics, I care about education,
Okay,
I care about foreign policy. I don't care about that stuff at all.
So I want to. There's the theory of relativity. If we want to just call it relativity, if it relates to you, then you have more understanding of that particular piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you talk about the fact that that there's this boogeyman out there trying to cut off the penises of little boys, and that's like a sticking point that was used to kind of be a divisive factor for let's call it Christians versus non-Christians, so to speak. If what you're saying is true. If what you're saying is true, and that is a social issue that people have found themselves relating to, then the voting would look much different than what it is today. And this is why I get into math and data. I'm a math guy. I'm a data guy. I'm a system architect guy. So I understand math, right? I don't believe that social issues are the ones that are driving economic indicators, or even the degradation that's happening in communities around the country. And so the indicators for that would be really simple. If what I'm saying is not correct, Patrick, and transgenderism and grooming and social manipulation in the schools is not significant, then why are, in Colorado alone, this year alone, over 200 cases of teachers being charged or dismissed in Colorado alone for grooming children on the grounds of sexual exploitation? And why are they in back rooms like they did in Colorado, passing HB 25-1309, HB 25-1312, HB 25-183, and 189 on a Saturday and Sunday, invoking Rule 14 and Rule 16, Rule 14 stating that you have 2 hours of debate, Rule 16, 5 minutes later, says there will be no debate, and cutting off parents and people in the community if they represent what is socially acceptable or socially, it's just Christians that are fighting against it, stripping the rights of parents.
Well, I would just tell you that I went to Catholic school in New England in the 1980s. So if you're looking for me to tell you that teachers don't molest kids, I don't know what to do for you. Like, that's just not going to happen. But what my point is that, like, so I spend a lot of time, and this might be a good way to transition to like exactly why you guys might want to talk to me, or might want to be talking to me, is that I spend a lot of time over the last 6 years going to Trump events, right? And I can tell you, as recently as the inauguration, when I was in DC, talking to a whole lot of Trump supporters, it's the thing that animates them. I've been to the Reawaken America tour twice. I've traveled from everywhere from San Francisco to Miami, to Austin, Texas, to North Carolina, to home here in Boston and New York, talking to people. And the thing that gets people animated is social issues. And it's the trans thing. They constantly tell me the biggest issue is men and women's sports. And it makes my brain break. Like, I like, what are you talking about? Who gives a fuck about any of that, And because you're talking about a percentage of the population that is statistically irrelevant, right? And I just don't get it. It's never made any sense to me. We talk about the economy, we talk about education, we talk about foreign policy. These are issues, taxes, whatever, the stuff that affects us on a regular basis. But we get obsessed with stuff that doesn't matter. And that's one of the things that I've found about the
here's some low hanging fruit. I think because it is low hanging fruit. I agree with you that it is a small sliver of the pie because it doesn't affect most of us. I will concede that point. I think
more and more it does.
Well, I think, but the reason why people are talking about it is that on the left, there seems to be a wholesale acceptance of something that was not widely accepted by the left up until recently. It's almost as if the Democratic Party co-opted and said, something, we are all about this within our bylaws. And if you go to like the DNC and their
Look,
platforms,
I can tell you honestly that I spend a lot of time talking to my liberal friends and a lot of time talking to my conservative friends, and I have more conservative friends than any liberal that I know, and more than most liberals at all. And what I hear is I don't hear anybody on the left talking about trans issues. I hear it non-stop every time I go to interview somebody in a crowd, in a MAGA crowd. I know what I'm going to get. At first, they're going to talk about trans stuff. And I'm like, I seriously could not give less of a shit about this. And I don't know. I live in what has to be considered, if not one of the most liberal cities in the world, definitely one of the most liberal cities in this country, right? In Boston, Massachusetts. And I can count on one hand how many conversations I've had with a trans person in the last 10 years. Okay, this is a made-up issue. This is a nonsensical, silly-ass issue that nobody should spend any time talking about.
I think what we're trying to distinguish is, like, there are regular people on the left and right that aren't the policymakers. They're not the people with the megaphone. What I'm specifically talking about is the DNC and the leadership have, whether you guys, talk about it amongst yourselves, at least the Republican platform, it's never been something that I feel like that they've really been pushing as a policy. I think they're being reactionary to the fact that the DNC has made it a tentpole feature of the left. Does that make sense?
I think, and I have to say this, honestly, I think when I listen to people on the right, podcasters, and all due respect, I feel like you guys have a cartoonish view, a caricature style view of what people on the left are, and I hear this all the time. And even like when Joe commented, when Joe commented on Twitter, he's like, "Well, this guy's actually articulate and on the left," and I'm like, it's the most backhanded compliment, and it just kind of shows. And I do appreciate you guys bringing me on and all that.
It's true, Patrick.
Well, see, that's the problem. I feel like you guys. And when I say you guys, I mean the MAGA crowd, right? So I am pigeonholing you to a certain extent. But I feel like you assume that when people have different political opinions than you, that they're uninformed or stupid. And what I did when I first started going to MAGA events back in 2018, I said, here's the thing. Like I told myself, I said, self, do not go out here and prejudge people. Do not allow them to call you a typical like Northeast liberal who doesn't pay any attention to working class people, even though I have working class tattooed across my chest, right? But don't let them do that. Don't go in and assume that someone's wearing a MAGA hat, that he's a racist or a shit kicker or a misogynist or a redneck. Just let people be who they are, react to what they say to you, right? But I find when I talk to a lot of right wingers, they assume that I am some sort of monster who wants to murder all their babies and trans all their kids. And it's really frustrating because it takes me a while. And I don't know how many times I've heard from people who you guys would know, guys at InfoWars, Proud Boys, who've said like, hey, man, you're not like the other liberals. And I'm like, you don't know any other liberals, man. You guys have to stop going into conversations with these preconceived notions.
Because I'm going to talk now.
I'm never going to have a reasonable conversation.
I'm going to talk now. Okay. Number one, I spend all of my time with liberals. I run 2 tech companies. Number one. Number two, I don't think you'll find another person that knows more about worthless shit than me. I've read more books. I've done more things. I play football with gang members. I literally work with incarcerated men to make sure they don't wear a scarlet letter. Like, so I don't know of a whole lot of people that surround themselves with more people that I fundamentally disagree with than I do. Number one. Number two, I don't think that liberals are stupid. I don't think they're articulate. I think that the leaders on the Democrat side or the liberal side are some of the dumbest human beings known to man. You can go, I just did it. I just went on Twitter looking at different pages for different representatives. So you rep Joe Nagisi. Nearly 20 federal facilities in Colorado at risk for being closed by DOJ, including for critical agencies like the Forest Service and Fort Collins. It's not true. There's no fundamental truth behind it. And so I think that, that I can have a conversation with you about what you do not or care about on tranny side or the abortion side. I do care about abortions. I am pro-life. But fundamentally speaking, you are articulate compared to the liars that are out there. I watched your video, and not one time during the course of that video did I felt like you were lying to me about, one, what you believed, or two, how you'd be willing to defend it on a podcast with someone on the right. So, I just want you to understand a few things. One, I'm not a normal guy. David's not a normal guy. We'll walk into a room full of liberals and have a great set of beer and sit down and party like a rock star. Although I quit drinking 6 months ago.
So let me add on this, because I think that I think both sides, to your point, there is a degree of projection, and there is, even in advocacy. I mean, we start to straw man instead of steel man. I'm not a registered Republican. I actually left the Republican Party in protest to Donald Trump in 2016 because I listened to networks' characterization of him, and I found out that it was wrong, and I was deceived. I'm also someone who's played in punk rock bands growing up, and some of my best friends to this day are atheists that now despise me because of my positions against the jab and standing up for free and fair elections. And on those two discrete issues, I was a subject matter expert. So I don't think I think in some ways we have been forced to run and form coalitions with people that, they feel marginalized. And to the degree that, that makes us MAGA, okay, whatever. I think that's probably a sloppy characterization, because there's lots of things that I see within conservative ranks that bother me, or they message in a way that I wouldn't have messaged it that way. So I just want to push back a little bit, saying, look, I think you're going to find that you've got people that have pretty nuanced positions in MAGA, but we see, at least I think we saw an existential crisis in 2020 from a standpoint of, our country, devolving into civil war, and whether we like it or not, people had to pick a camp.
Yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
Well, I can just I can tell you, I think, since we were talking about 2020 and Civil War, I can give you guys a little bit of a unique perspective on January 6th. Having been there, and I was there to take photos that day. I took the overnight train from Boston and get down there early in the morning, and I followed the Proud Boys on their march from the Washington Monument over to the Ellipse, and then took a ton of photos and a bunch of video, and it was obvious to me that there wasn't any plan to go ahead and storm the Capitol or do anything insane. So I left just a few minutes before it all happened. As a photographer, you would never leave a situation where you thought something was going to pop off like that. So I went home. I was on the train when it really got out of control, and I was subpoenaed to testify. And I testified on behalf of the Proud Boys, on behalf of Joe Biggs, Enrique Tarrio, and Ethan Nordine, Zachary Real, and Dominic Pizzola. I testified to the fact that I was positive that those guys were overcharged. They didn't commit seditious conspiracy. I was there. There was no conspiracy. If there were, I would have known about it, and I would have stayed to take photos of it. And I testified, to that fact in court. It didn't matter. They got convicted anyway. And I feel like the federal government basically made the case that, hey, these guys are assholes, therefore they should go to jail. Not that these guys actually committed the crime they were accused of. And I have a real problem with that. So,
right. So we can agree on this then. We can agree on this.
Yeah, of course. I think
All right.
Yeah.
So let's find some relevancy to me, or the relevancy to who you are, is super important to me, because I think it gives us perspective. Right. But I got to ask you questions about stuff that, frankly, that I'm divided on myself from a conservative standpoint. Like I think I'm a biblical conservative. What would it call me? From the south side of heaven. What about judges? How do you feel about judges in this country?
Well, I mean, I guess we can take it as in a case by case basis, but it's gotten a little goofy to me that we just decide that, hey, this one was a disappointed judge or that appointed judge, and therefore nothing they say is relevant.
Hold on a second. I don't care.
What I'm worried
about
more
Trump.
about is juries. What I'm worried more about is.
I don't care about Trump, the Trump verdict. I don't care about what the Bossberg. Put all that aside. Let's talk about people.
No, I'm just speaking in general. In general, yeah. I think it when somebody doesn't like a verdict, they say, "Well, this guy appointed this one, so that's a problem." If we apply that standard, everybody's going to decide that whoever was a Republican appointed judge or a Democratic appointed judge is wrong about everything or is in the tank, and that's unsustainable. That's not good. What I really have a problem with is just juries not paying attention to what they're doing. And I got the feeling while I was testifying in federal court in D.C. that the jury had already made up their mind and was uninterested in what I had to say. And that's a problem. But I don't know how you fix that, Joe.
So is it a fair system?
That's a massive problem.
Is it a fair system?
I think oftentimes it isn't. But I don't know that it's one way or the other. I just think it's, but I mean, so say I were to concede that a right-winger can't get a decent trial in D.C. What does that mean? We have to move it to Lubbock, Texas?
Why not?
And then
why not move it to a place where the person lives? A jury of their peers. You can't
generally
argue that someone in D.C. is a jury of peers because the people in D.C. they proved that Google, by the way, pumped negative information about J6ers into DC.
But if you just say a person,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, if you just decide that a jury of your peers is a jury of people who agree with you, then we're going to get the same stupid result all the time. That's not. I mean, that doesn't work. That's not sustainable.
Wait.
The same people were called for jury duty in multiple cases inside of DC. It's the same people.
Time out.
It's statistically impossible to have.
No. But what I was saying, Joe, is that if I were to decide that the only liberals who can get a fair trial have to get it in Boston or DC or Philadelphia or Baltimore or whatever, that would be ridiculous. Just as ridiculous as if you say, hey, a conservative convicted of something can only get a fair trial in Texas or Florida or Mississippi. I mean, what are we doing? At that point, we're just picking like who we want to decide. It becomes ideological to a point where it's just straight stupid.
I think the thing that last time I checked, as far as constitutional protections, though, is that we are entitled to a jury of our peers. So whether or not you get the protections afforded by a community that sees the world the way that you do, that's an enshrined principle, number one. Number two, one of the things that really bothers me, and I think you articulated this, so I'm not projecting this onto you, but there are many people that stuck around and did take pictures. They didn't leave. And you could call them right-wingers. And they were exercising what they thought was a degree of journalistic, professionalism. Sure. And many of those were swept up and indicted. We had over 1,500 people that were indicted, prosecuted unfairly. And so I don't think we need to necessarily lend a DC versus Texas framework. Well, just how about, if I'm from Indiana, and I happen to go there. I think people would rather be judged by community members that aren't subsumed and sucked into the DC elitist beltway. And so I don't, and that's something that I think is.
But do you want to apply that all the time, everywhere? Like, do you want to say that if somebody commits a crime, somebody from Texas commits a crime in New York, that he has to be tried in Texas? I mean, that to me sounds like a really bad idea.
I'll answer the question because let me just say this. The District of Columbia, though, is kind of a weird, I get what you're saying, but because DC is not a state, you still have 14th Amendment considerations, basically due process rights. And so I don't think that DC is an accurate composite of how the justice system works. works across.
So are you saying
across
that
the
DC
country.
should just be kind of like moved out of it and everybody else should be like, if the argument is that DC should not be able to hold trials at all, it should
that's
be
not
like
the
the
argument.
state of Virginia or no, I'm asking because I don't
Okay, yeah,
understand exactly.
I think if you can bring data and metrics that prove that you've got a microcosm that is like so instantiated in DC politics that you're not getting the constitutional protection of a jury of your peers. I don't.
I mean,
think
how
that
do you do that? Do you pass like what's the mechanism behind it? Because you were a DA, right? Like
district attorney? Yeah.
okay, all right, yeah. So obviously, you know more. You're going to forget more about the law tomorrow than I'm ever going to know. But what I just don't know what the mechanism behind this is. Like, how do you decide that a certain municipality doesn't have the right to try people who committed crimes in that municipality?
Well, there's the abstract question, right? And then there's the reality that most people, I mean, everyone kind of runs on this, left and right, when they put out their campaign commercials, is that, you know, that they are not representative of the DC swamp. And you'll see talking points on both sides.
Right.
So it seems like there's already a concession amongst the left and the right that DC does not represent the American person. It truly is a place for the uniparty elites. And so my objections are purely grounded on
But
the fact that
the massive majority, most people in DC have nothing to do with politics. Most people in DC are relatively poor people who don't work in government. Like, I think that people have a really weird view of the District of Columbia because I have friends who live there and I spend a lot of time there. If you're not on Capitol Hill, you're going to find a lot of people who don't give a damn about politics, who have absolutely no interest in any of this stuff, who are not partisan, who are just regular working class people. Because for every single one of those politicians, they've got to have like 20 staffers and 20 people who work for them and 20 people who clean the houses that they live in. Like, DC is not some sort of alien, planet that like the people don't live on Mars. They live in Washington, DC. Right. And they're regular people and they work hard and they're decent Americans. And to just denigrate all of them. Like I said, look, I think the government poisoned that trial with the Proud Boys and the government was wrong and absolutely disgusting in the way they prosecuted those guys. But I don't think that it's impossible to get a decent jury in DC. I think it's wrong to say.
Wait a minute. You have a 99.9, if not 100% conviction rating at every trial, and you're gonna stand by that.
But you as a lawyer understand that the government only prosecutes cases they're positive they can win. So that's why the rate is that high. Everybody knows
that is so far off the national average. So far off the national average.
Yeah, I know, because they don't take cases. They're not positive they can win. They don't prosecute.
That's not true.
Come on, man. That's not
true.
Okay.
That's just not true.
Patrick, hold on a second. Hold on. So, by the way, put us all up on screen, please. I don't need to be here by myself. Just put us all up there. Okay. So, Patrick, who here grew up in DC? Who on this panel grew up in DC?
I did.
None of us.
I did.
Did you?
Southeast, yeah.
Okay.
In DC.
So it's a real town.
Raised. Look, I lived in the hood, so I know exactly what social programs can do. I'm one of 8. My brother was murdered in 2017 by a police officer in Virginia, right? Who ran my brother off a bike at 90 miles an hour into a wall where he hit a pole and nearly broke him in half, right? I'm not a back the blue guy. Right? I'm not. I'll back the blue if they back me. I don't believe that. I believe the judiciary is rotted to the core. I believe that they are elitists. There are people that are there that have created the school to prison pipeline. I have seen it. I have seen it in my own family. My whole family's interracial, by the way. So, I mean, and everyone in my family is conservative because of me. So I grew up in DC. It's a cesspool of shit. And those elitists that are in DC do everything they can to keep the people in Southeast thrown over a bridge. And that's really what happens there. They don't have a voice. They don't care about politics because politics has fucked them their entire life. That's why they don't care about politics. There's an opportunity drought, an education drought, and a food desert in that environment. You don't have United Airlines is
no,
not in
I
the city
understand.
looking.
I understand exactly what you're saying, but I don't know how that means that you can't have a fair jury
You can't.
in the district.
You
Really?
can't.
Okay, well, here's some data. Here's some
You
data.
can't.
Here's some data.
Okay.
Okay, so
I mean, everything you just said is obviously true, Joe, and I don't, and I, you know, that's horrible that all that happened, and I can't even tell you, you know, how heartbreaking that is, but that doesn't mean that there aren't people in you can't find 12 people in DC who can give a fair trial. I just think the 12 people who were in the Proud Boys trial didn't give those guys a fair trial. It doesn't mean it's not possible.
And this is where I want to push back, and this is why I want to articulate why DC is different than getting a jury of your peers outside of that area. 162,144 federal employees as of 2023, according to government-provided statistics, which makes up a significant portion of the city's workforce. So about 43.3% of the workforce has some relationship to the federal government. So when you perceive that the J6 riot was an insurrection, or the way that it was reported by the media, that almost is like the
I didn't say that.
I'm not saying that you have, but
Yeah.
the media, widespread, full stop, did say that. And so it's almost a perceived attack on my job, my place, my habitat. And so it's not just
I think you're
capital
making an
A's.
assumption there that people who do maintenance in a building that's a government building have some sort of like allegiance to the government. I think any of us who know anybody who works
fair
maintenance
enough.
in a building
Fair-
like gives a damn about that. Like I think that's a bit of a stretch.
Patrick, fair enough. But if you can point to a state where 43% of the city's
there
workforce-
isn't.
There's not. And so that's
Maybe
my-
West Virginia is close, but not
Okay.
not quite 43. But yeah.
But that's my point. And so there was, and from a media standpoint, the news wasn't reporting what you reported. There was a megaphone and basically a narrative that was created about an insurrection to overturn the government. And so when Joe brought up the Google data, what people saw in the DC area was very, very different than independent thinkers that were doing their due diligence on other news sources. And to the degree that you think that 99.9% conviction ratings are like the standard in prosecutions, I've taken cases and I've won cases that I should have lost, and I've lost cases that I should have won. It's not a sure thing. Maybe in the federal side, it's
I
little
understand.
higher.
And look, I'm not saying. Look, I've been a proponent of, as most liberals are, of criminal justice reform for a long time. When I heard, you know, the Enrique and all these guys telling me about the conditions in the prison, it pissed me off, and it should piss everybody off, right?
Mhm.
And that's why I don't think that we should be sending anybody, no matter what they did, to El Salvador, to some gulag, right? But the deal is that we should take these things in a case-by-case basis and try and fix the system, and not just make it a partisan issue, you know. And I feel like that's what we're doing right now. Not necessarily you guys, and right now we're having a conversation, but I feel like it's like, hey, you know, we're upset about the criminal justice system when it's our guys who are in jail, but we don't give a damn when it's the other guys. And it gets a little bit
doesn't even
boring.
apply to this conversation though, because I mean I'm on the right, I'm a conservative, and yet
Right.
you know Jamal comes in here every week, sits down with me. He's been there's a guy upstairs that 14 years ago was a kid that I mentored, who now works for me at my tech company, who had 2 felonies.
Joe, I
served 3
wasn't
years.
telling you that you were doing anything wrong.
So,
I'm not. That's not.
But this is the same generalities on liberals versus conservatives, right? This is working the problem. I don't think liberals are bad people.
I'm not painting. I'm not. Sure. No, and I don't think conservatives are bad people, because, you know, I look, as I grew up with traditional conservatism, and I think, Dave, you've said something about this earlier. You know, there are certain values and principles that are associated with conservatism that I absolutely have no problem with. I mean, and I know that most people in where I live don't have a problem with them, because Ronald Reagan won Massachusetts in 1984, right? Richard Nixon won Massachusetts in 1972. They both won 49 states, right? I mean, conservatism is not difficult to sell. The idea of personal responsibility, strong national defense, low
Leave me
taxes.
alone.
That's not difficult. That's not difficult to sell to the American public. It oftentimes wins. It's more often than not, it wins. Okay. The problem is when you start to throw the other stuff in there, you get into like some of the wacky social stuff, and that's when it becomes a problem. And I think it becomes a problem with supply side economics and trickle down economics and things of that nature. But I'm not a guy who thinks that conservatism is a bad thing. I'm not.
Let me ask you this question, because I think we've covered the gamut on criminal justice, and I appreciate the fact that you stood by folks that you might not align with on a whole host of issues because what you saw, just wasn't right. But tariffs is not a popular thing among ranking Republicans or Democrats.
No.
Right?
No.
And so you talked about being a liberal that believes in the working class, and so I'm interested for your take, because I know a lot of union types. One of my best friends that I play in a band, he's a union member, loves Trump, loves tariffs because he understands what this is going to do for manufacturing. So what's your take on tariffs? Because I mean, Rand Paul is calling Trump a tyrant for bringing him up. But do you see this as a bad thing for the American worker?
Yeah, I do, and I'd rather punch myself in the taint than agree with Rand Paul, but I have to because I have to. Rand Paul made a comment the other day, and he's not the first guy to say this, but he said having a trade deficit is not necessarily a problem. I have a trade deficit with my grocery store, and the tariff thing is sort of ridiculous. Like you said, you play in a band, right? So,
yeah.
What do you play?
Play guitar.
Okay, I knew that just by looking at you, but okay. So I play guitar too, not very well, but anyway, I have a Fender Telecaster, right? So it's a Mexican-made Telecaster, right? I bought it like 15 years ago, right? I could have bought the American version of that, and we all know that the American versions are more expensive, and they used to be a whole lot better. There used to be a big chasm between the Mexican Fender and the American Fender, but now it's really kind of not that big a deal. And I saved $400 buying a Mexican Telecaster back in like 2013 or whatever it was that I bought it. Right now, a smart tariff would be to put maybe like a 10%, 8% sort of tariff on the Mexican version of the Telecaster, so that if it comes down to like $200 difference, I'm like, you know what, I'll pay the extra 200 and get the American version because patriotism and because it's a little bit of a better product. That's a smart tariff. So tariffs are a tool that can be used correctly or incorrectly, just like any other tool, right? There's a right tool for the job and a wrong tool for the job. A sledgehammer is not the right tool for this. A scalpel is. That's a cliche, but it's true, right? This nonsense with like across the board tariffs. And I think the people in Liechtenstein, which is a country of 41,000 people, got hit with a 37% tariff for no fucking reason whatsoever. I mean, this is so ham-handed.
Why did it get the 37%?
I have no idea, and neither does anybody else.
What's the tariff of Liechtenstein for U.S. products?
They sell, apparently, I read this morning, and this is weird, but they sell high-end fillings and tooth replacements. And they
what is the tariff for U.S. made products to go into Liechtenstein?
I have no idea, but nobody buys in Liechtenstein. They don't buy anything from America because they don't need it. That's the point. A trade deficit is not necessarily a thing to get upset about.
It's not true.
So Liechtenstein, like, they don't want to buy look, I advertise for a living. My job is to advertise cars, right? And I work for an auto dealership group that has dealerships all over the country. So I advertise all of the big three plus a whole bunch of foreign brands, right? Which is one of the reasons that I think these tariffs are really scary, because we're all shitting our pants right now over this, right? But the thing is, nobody in Europe is going to buy a Ram truck or an F-150 because they don't fit on their roads. So the idea, and nobody in France wants to buy our cheese or our damn wine because they have better stuff. Like, this is dumb to think that we should just have even. That's so silly. Do you have any friends in France?
Do you have friends in France?
I have one. Yeah, only one. So
I spent 6.5 years in the Middle East and Africa. I learned Arabic, right? While I was over there. I was flying back and forth. So they wouldn't cut my head off. That's why I did it. Okay.
Sure. Sounds like a good plan.
True story, right? And then I found out that they're actually pretty nice people, right? And a majority of the shitheads are the ones that are in leadership, but I got to sit at the table with them too. Okay, so I have lots of friends in different countries, 65 countries over that 6.5 years, right? Lots of people. Do you know what people tell me when I go to visit them? I'm like, hey, I'm headed to Paris. Do you need anything? Yeah. Can you do me a favor? Can you bring me some cheese? I'm like, what? They're like, yeah,
You
Joe,
mean from Paris?
From people from Paris asking me to bring cheese into Paris. I'm like, are you serious?
Bring what kind of cheese into Paris?
I don't know, some weird cheese. It's a U.S. made cheese. I don't know. It literally was the weirdest thing I've ever been asked. Right?
They want American cheese in France.
Do you know what else they asked me to bring?
What?
The Chef Boyardee. What's the thing? The
Chef Boyardee
hamburger helper. Can you bring me over some hamburger helpers? And I'm like, why can't you get hamburger helper there? Yeah, we can. It's like $12. I'm like, what? It's like $3 here. They're like, it's $12. And I'm like, okay, I'll bring.
Well, I don't know. I lived in Italy for 2 years, and I never had a hankering for hamburger helper. But
I don't either. I don't have it in a tray here. So, but my point is that there's a disparity. First of all, there's a huge difference in what you can get in those countries and what you can get here because we allow for GMOs and Monsanto, which should be run out of business, right? All that shit.
And hey, that's something that we agree on 100%. If I could put a company out of business in this world, other than maybe Pfizer, it would be Monsanto. So we're good with that.
We'll agree with you on Pfizer too, brother.
There you go. But I hate big pharma.
Yeah, of course. Drugs. There's a million reasons. I'm glad you guys are all on board with that now because that's been kind of a liberal thing for about 30 years now. But along with prison reform. So, hey, look, no, I don't want to. Let's not get sidetracked into all that stuff. But no, seriously, I really agree with you. And my problem with Monsanto isn't just the fact that with GMOs, it's the fact that they price fix along with all the other big agri companies and cause us to pay way more than we should. I always say that, people like to call liberals socialists. I'm like, man, I'm a capitalist. I just wish we would try it sometime. You know what I mean? Like, I really wish we would just be capitalists and pay what it actually costs to make whatever you're buying plus a reasonable profit. But we don't do that.
Well, I agree that there's a crony capitalism. It's like an unholy alliance between the government and corporations.
But you can't have it both ways. You can't talk about capitalism and say that you want government involvement because the governments are what actually kills and regulates small, medium businesses into a whole.
Yeah, I think, Patrick, what strikes...
What I want to have is capitalism in which the government really just enforces certain, monopoly and collusion rules. That's it. I don't want the government to get involved in everything. But seriously, if Monsanto and all the other big agri companies can get together and decide what a loaf of bread or a dozen eggs costs when it has nothing to do with what it actually costs to make it, plus a reasonable profit for everybody involved, then yeah, I think the government should get involved and say, you can't do that, man. That's just me. Call me crazy, call me a pervert.
No. What strikes me about you, Patrick, and it's actually consistent with a lot of my liberal friends is, I think on the micro, you guys are extremely intelligent, and on the macro, I think this is where I usually push back because you brought up tariffs being a tool, and I agree it's a tool, but in the current iteration, it's a terrible thing, and so one of the things I just was looking at while you guys were talking was America's golden age when it came to manufacturing and manufacturing jobs, and what you'll find is that from a macro standpoint, it was shortly after we embraced tariffs. I think it was President McKinley that it was through that system that we were able to create, the world's largest manufacturing base. We were the world's largest creditor nation, and so I agree with your analogy on the Fender Telecaster, but at some point there's diminishing returns because all of the jobs, it's like we'll never have an America where we could build that guitar and make it cheaper because we've exported all the jobs overseas. And so do you...
Well, what happens if you're right?
Yeah. Well,
What happens if you're right? So say you're right, and we bring all these, we start building factories in the U.S., which obviously we all understand is going to take years. But say it happens, right? And we start manufacturing, whirlpools in Ohio again, right? And I want to go and buy a whirlpool washer, or a refrigerator at Walmart. We all obviously know that the only reason that China can charge that you can buy Chinese products at Walmart for such a cheap price is because they pay slave wages over there, right? So if we're not going to pay slave wages in the US, right? Because that's not the kind of job we want to bring back to the US. There would be no point in that, right? So if we bring good paying jobs to the US, manufacturing jobs, now I have to basically say, I'm willing to pay $200 more for that washing machine or that dryer or that pair of Nike sneakers that's not being sewed together by a bunch of Vietnamese kids with their teeth anymore, right? So
yeah, but do you have
if that's the case, we have to make a trade. We made a trade 50 years ago.
But do you have a historical like basis for that? Because we all have like grandparents that are like, I remember when the cost of a moon pie and a bicycle and a car was like 5 cents. I mean, there are costs to transporting things, across the ocean, supply chain dynamics, and so I guess there was a time where the American dream was much more tangible to both the left and the right, the Kennedy Democrat, if you will, versus, before everything got so hoard out. There was a quality of life that almost like a nostalgia factor of people remembering America where it wasn't so darn expensive to have a home and a car. And it seemed like manufacturing was part of that. So what's wrong with seeing if this is what's going to stop the exploitation? Because I think you're going to see robotics and automation. You're still going to have construction workers that are building facilities and all those things. But Elon Musk, through all kinds of
but now you're not talking about bringing jobs back at that point. You're talking about bringing robots back at that point, and that's not the same thing.
But there's still going to be jobs created. I concede that. But if you don't want like the sweatshops, I don't want the sweatshops. We don't want people being exploited or children. That's going to be met. But there's still going to be booms in other industries to
listen.
I really think that the bottom line is, if you want to pay, $2,000 for an iPhone, we can make it in Ohio. But if you don't want to pay $2,000 for an iPhone, it's going to have to be made in Thailand or China or Vietnam. That's just the reality. We have to put on our big boy pants and admit that we made a deal about 50 years ago that we wanted cheaper goods and we were going to sacrifice our manufacturing sector in order to get cheaper goods. That's the thing that we did. And to undo it, okay, if that's your goal, but that's going to be awfully painful.
Patrick, I'm sorry, but I'm going to disagree with you, and here's why. We still pay $200 for a pair of sneakers that cost $2 to make. We still pay $2,000 for a cell phone through subsidies for a phone that costs literally $8 to make. So that phone that you have, that iPhone that you have, the component index for all of those parts is less than $15. Less than $15. And yet Apple gets to sell that phone for $1,100, $1,200, whatever it is, right? They still have less than probably $100 landed. I mean, that means your burden cost on that phone, everything else is probably $100. They sell that phone for $800, $900, whatever it is, right? I think that one I just got was the 16.
How's that going to change if we make it in Florida?
Hold on a second. What the problem with, and by the way, I own lots of businesses. I have 216 employees. I'm in tech space. I have OEMs on the automotive side that are my clients.
Sure.
I represent really big companies around the country. Have since I started my company 13 years ago. So I know exactly what you talk about as far as advertising. I have a Marcom unit. I have a cyber unit. I do GSA contracts. I all sorts of stuff that I do inside my companies. Okay. The biggest problem that I have in business is regulation. That is the number one cost that I have in business. And so, where I agree with you, I actually don't mind buying stuff that's made in China. I don't. And when I looked into the tariffs, I don't even mind not having having tariffs, right? The TRQ has been around a long time, right? Which is If you know anything about TRQs, they use it to regulate commodities like sugar and stuff that we have in the United States, that there are no sort of embargoes or trade regulations that would make unfair competition here, right? But the biggest problems that I have is that we always look at the symptom, we don't look at the problem. The problem to me is not that it's being built in China. The problem with me is that there's no equitable solution on the world trade market. And I know this on my side because I have to send stuff over there. I could use a car for an example. I had a Porsche Turbo Cab S, and a friend of mine over in the UAE wanted to buy my car. He's like, Joe, I'm going to give you 500 grand. I was like, okay. So I picked up the phone. He goes, but you got to get it here. I'm like, all right, done. It's a $300,000 car. I got 200 grand to work with. What do you think my tariff was to get it into the UAE?
No idea.
$185,000.
Oh, it's insane.
I mean, it's not a real thing, right? But in the United States, this tariff creates wealth for the other country. It's not creating wealth for the people. And I think what President Trump's trying to do, because I've read the trade policy.
I think that's a pretty specific and really unusual niche sort of instant, though.
Patrick,
I mean, come on, man.
Have you looked at tariffs? I just told you.
I'm just
US
saying.
Most
people don't sell their Porsche to somebody in England. That you really like. The example. I understand what you're saying, and it is ridiculous, but it's also not something that's going to affect 99.9 out of 100 people. Remember, I started this conversation with relativity, whether or not it's relational to you. And this is where we get stuck in that's not the norm. But as you start actually peeling back the onion, you can start looking at foreign and domestic policy as the norm. And by the way, I worked in foreign and domestic policy related to other countries. So I got to see in Sudan, you had TRQs on sugar. Sugarcane came out of a place called Kanana Sugar, largest producer of sugar in the world, comes out of that area, sugarcane. Right, it's a non-embargoed, non-sanctioned part of Sudan. Right before they had the referendum vote. Right. So I was at Kanana Sugar. They were doing stuff where they would ship sugar into the United States. So, like I said, I'm a walking encyclopedia of worthless information. But I use this information in order to make good decisions. You get more with sugar than you do with shit.
Yeah. So you have to look at this from the perspective of when I put water in a bowl. The bowl will only take so much water. And what's happened in the United States, and I use this as an example, is that our water bowl's empty, but their water bowl keeps overfilling. And because of regulations in the United States and because of limited markets, because of big corporations, the technocracies, the big corporations like Walmart and Amazon that have basically crippled and stolen ideas from SMBs, small to medium businesses, and taken stuff from the community and turned it into a globalist environment because of the fact that they've actually taken what's not theirs, and the regulations allow it, but don't allow small to medium businesses to do the same. There's an unfair advantage to Yong in China and Mark Smith in the U.S. to compete in the same market, because Yong over there in China, he literally doesn't have any regulations. Matter of fact, there's no OSHA, right? And so you have this thing, and they still are.
Yeah, but I mean, are you saying you don't want to have when people talk about regulations and want to get rid of regulations, it sounds good, right? I get it. We don't want to be handcuffed, and we don't want our companies to be able to, the government to tell people what to do. But when you start saying what regulations you want to get rid of, people start thinking what the fuck? I worked
Patrick,
for a while hold on a second. Let me just say,
I want to hear what regulations. Hold on. Go ahead.
So I freelance for an energy company. I'm not going to say which name, but
Tesla, probably
back in the early 2010s. No, it was a straight up oil company, right?
Yeah, I know.
And they had
mess with you.
Yeah, no, it's all right. They had a bunch of rigs that they wanted me to shoot and produce and voice some safety videos for basically how not to get your ass killed on the rig the first day you're on there. And this is the kind of stuff when you get employed, you have to sit down and watch 4 hours of videos, and so they can say, hey, we told you not to get your head cut off, right? So I was out there doing this stuff, and I don't know anything about oil drilling or fracking or whatever, but I'm out in these places in Western Pennsylvania and Ohio and, all over the place. And the stuff you see that is actually legal, the cesspools that are created and all this. And I understand, look, we run our country on fossil fuels and it's not going to change. But all this stuff you see, and then you hear somebody say, man, we got too many damn regulations. I was like, if I could just show everybody, because all the stuff I shot was like confidential, I can't. But if I were just to show the average American, like, hey, this is what a fracking rig does to the area around it. Check this out. People would be like, oh, what the? And you want to talk about reducing regulations? They never say what regulations they get rid of. They just say, they show you a stack of pages of paper and they say, we got rid of all these regulations. And people are like, yeah, that's a great idea. And then if you were actually to read them, that you can just dump all kind of toxic sludge into your water, people would be like, what? I don't want that. That's insane. So I don't buy the whole hey, get rid of regulations.
But no one's
Fine.
saying that.
But I want to know which ones you're getting rid of. I want to know which ones they are.
You took it to the straw man, which we don't hold. No one's saying no regulations. Right now, the Federal Register has about 300,000 regulations. So right. where we would find agreement is, yeah, I don't think that the big pharmaceutical companies should have protection and be immune from liability. Okay, so we agree on that, but that's one.
Yes.
So where are the other 299,000 regulations? Are they really necessary? Because if people actually understand the tort system based on harm, based on statutory claims that you can bring in a court of law, if you're hurt, there is a redress. And so to the degree that I think we're pushing back is, are the regulations duplicative? And 300,000? I mean, come on. So I mean,
yeah, but I would just like for once someone to tell me which regulation they got rid of and why it was a good idea. No, I mean, I want a politician, not seriously, Joe. I hear you, and I'm sure you have a good one to give an example of, and it's fine. But I want Donald Trump or another politician to say, hey, this is a regulation we got rid of because this is ridiculous. They never do it. They just say, we got rid of this many pages of regulations, and people say, oh, that's great. Well, oh, come on, man. This is, what am I, a fucking infant? This is silly. Tell me which regulations, because just saying you got rid of regulations is so vague and silly that I don't buy that, man.
So let me play devil's advocate for you, because I'm on the data side, right? I'm a first party data aggregator, one of the biggest in the country. I don't resell my data. I don't use it like Google does or Yahoo, resell it in the open market to third parties so I can make money on the same person over and over again. Right? Well, for years, last 10 years, specifically, they've been talking about data security. We have to protect your data. Your data is at risk if we let people have data security. So Apple was allowed to do this thing called I'd go through the technical terms, but basically block the ability for third parties' pixels to be used in order to gather data, from IMEIs to IP addresses, right? That happened. It affects your industry on the advertising side. It basically deballed or crippled the data industry outside of the big companies, Google, Apple, all those guys, right? So this was regulation that came down from two congressional leaders. Okay, who was the person, or what companies were behind that? Do you know?
No, I don't.
Google, Apple, Microsoft. They built an entire lobbyist group and a law firm in DC that wrote the regulations. Who was responsible for it in California? And limiting data access in California? Google, Facebook, Yahoo. I mean,
right.
So these companies come in and they lie to the public. This is my problem with regulation. This is my problem with left versus right. Like, people want life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, right? We have a constitution. It's very, very simple, but yet we stack on laws that weren't actually passed. I mean, the Chevron decision that happened 2 years ago, people basically ignored it. It said that unregulated bureaucrats don't have a right to actually punish or go after you, right, that isn't legislatively recognized and enacted by Congress, but they do it anyway, right? And so when I talk about regulations, and you say, well, I want a politician to explain it to me. Well, holy shit, those guys are all bought. I want the people that run businesses that are adversely affected by it, that are in the middle of this thing, not to be fooled by the fact that there's data regulations. I just one, right? We could talk about tollways, because you're on the East Coast, you're in Boston. You can't even get on a road without paying a toll.
Well, let me add this real quick because I think we've parsed out probably where we really do stand. It's not no regulation, but what we're seeing is that these corporate conglomerates will basically regulate a place to get rid of competition and make it more cumbersome for regular people to earn a living. And I'm more familiar with politics, but I'll tell you one of the things, like grassroots candidates that want to run for office, good luck, because the FEC requirements, the need for CPAs, the need for attorneys, basically, it's not even so much that they couldn't do it, but it's the amount of money that is caught up with having good, wholesome people running for office. And the people that can navigate that are the entrenched incumbents that have teams deployed 24/7. And they can go after those folks that make minute mistakes in the reporting. And you'll see it in every single race between an incumbent and some up-and-comer, whether it's left or right, that if there's going to be a violation from an FEC standpoint, they get squeezed, they get fined, and they get rooted out of a race. And you can find violations on the incumbent's part, and there's never even a slap on the wrist. So I think it's like from that standpoint.
I totally agree with you, and yeah, and
Okay.
I can give you like one of my favorite all-time TV shows is The West Wing, and there's a thing that I really disagree with President Bartlett on in that show, where he says that we shouldn't have term limits because we already have term limits. They're called elections, but that's nonsense because the incumbency is such an advantage in our system because of all the money in politics that if you're already elected, you've got how many corporate donors behind you, you've got name recognition, you've got people who can get you elected. It's really hard for a grassroots person to get elected outside of like rural areas where you're not going to have a ton of people voting, and you can go knock doors and actually talk to just about everybody who has a vote, right? So one of the things that I agree with one of the prominent Proud Boys, Joe Biggs, is a friend of mine, is on term limits. If we agree on anything politically, it's on term limits, which is why I kind of think it's disturbing that you get Trump talking about running for a third term. But in any event, we should have term limits in Congress. You shouldn't be able to spend more than a decade in Congress or in the Senate or anywhere for that matter. And I think that if we did that, we would be able to do a whole lot of good in this country.
Yeah, so I believe that people in town square can make better decisions than politicians. There's only 7,500 or so, a little less than that, just under 7,500 elected positions in the entire country, right? And those 7,500, just do the math on what you'd have to give them in order to buy out the entire population of the country, have them do your biddings, right? We have 4 election companies that run 97.6 or something % of the elections in the country. It's supposed to be, elections are supposed to be independent. Every state's supposed to have its own election system. Yet you built this thing called the ERIC system that connects those systems. And so, I'm a pragmatic individual. I look at things from the standpoint of how does it favor the people? Should it favor the people? Liberal, Democrat, think what you want. Man, if you want to be, purple with web feet and walk around calling yourself a cat, that's fine. Just don't do that shit for me. Like I don't care. You're not special. The whole idea of that. So I think most conservatives probably live their life that way. Now, the ones that go to MAGA rallies, I bet you I could find a lot of people that are going to talk about trannies and talk about all that stuff. I don't. I talk about economic policy. I talk about foreign policy, domestic policy. How many wars are we in? What's happening in Ukraine? Why do we have biolabs over there that we're funding? Why do we have the Wuhan lab? Why did they hide that information? Why is it that we're 50 years later, we're now finding out about JFK? Why is it we can't see the Epstein files over 18 years? Are they afraid of the other people that are in it? Are they hiding it? Do we need a daddy?
Yes.
I look at things from the standpoint.
Obviously.
Yeah. So you see what I mean? So we have to look at this from the standpoint,
including the president.
What's good is good and what's bad. No, the president didn't have anything to do with Epstein Island at all. The president never did that at all. Somebody put something out there with him, with Epstein, in like 20 different pictures. And yet I just ran it through a deal and only 4 of the 20 pictures were real. Right? It's simple. I'm a tech guy, so I run it through. I'm like, okay, did he spend 20 times with them? No. And by the way, I've been in the room with guys that are really bad people. I sold drugs when I was 16. I hung out with some really bad people. I was a bad kid, frankly. Now, through my faith and the fact that I love Jesus, I've gone a different direction. And so is my life. And so is the amount of success that I've had as a result of that. But I mean, one of the things as we sit here talking, I keep kind of cataloging what you're saying. I actually think we talk past each other more on this podcast than we did disagreeing with each other, right? Because frankly, I don't care about trannyism, but I don't actually want my daughter competing against a man. I think we're debating the ridiculous. I don't want it, right? So there's certain things that I think that if we just talk about it in a common sense approach, we'll come to the same conclusion.
And let me just say this, Patrick. Our primary focus on the show the past 4 years really hasn't been the social issues. I am used to not getting the candidate that I want. In fact, I can look back at my entire life of voting, and the people that I like didn't make it through the primary. And 99% of the people in Congress, Republican, Democrat, I don't feel like I've got much in common with them. So what we've been focused on is election integrity from an infrastructure standpoint, and we find just as much corruption through the uniparty in red states as we do blue, and we're very, very transparent about that. And unless we solve that issue, to me, it's kind of, I open up the discussion with the political theater on kind of the talking points of political scientists. And the reason why I bring this up is if you don't have a robust belief that the election system is fair and transparent, and you believe, as I do, whether you disagree with me or not, that we're seeing selections rather than elections, then your policymakers are never going to carry out the things that I care about and that you care about. I think I can actually, in a healthy republic where the system's fair, I can live with being a loser for an election, election season, fight to live another day. And so I like to see like just a higher level of discourse on fundamental issues like free and fair elections, number one. And then,
I don't think we probably disagree on that. Like, I mean, when you say free and fair elections, I assume, because I watched the show a couple of times before I came on, I assume that you mean getting rid of electronic voting, getting rid of early voting.
Mm-hmm. No. Not
if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah. So early voting for me is, I believe that people's lives are much more complicated than one day. You have people that travel all over the country. You can't disenfranchise voters. So I want every citizen in this country to vote. But what I don't want is, I don't want mail-in ballots, because there's too much room for manipulation. And with the machines, I can make a machine do anything I want. Like, it's a black box. I know. Right.
But if you say no mail-in ballots, you mean no absentee ballots?
Nope. You can get an
absentee ballot
voted. If you apply for an absentee ballot, if you apply for it, and it gets sent to you, and you verify your signature, and you send it back to them, yes, no problem. I'm good.
Because I was just saying that's how I normally vote. But anyway,
I think what we're looking for,
and obviously the overseas military has to vote that way. So
UACAVA, but I want to create precincts overseas as well. I want them to have precincts at the bases, just the way they do in the United States, right? And you go in and you vote. They get to vote early, 2 weeks early, because just so you know, if you look at historically over the last 2 decades, a big percentage of the UACAVA votes are never counted, right? They're never counted. So you have people that are disenfranchised overseas because there is no system. You can send an email. I mean, if you've ever read the UACAVA, it's a long process by which you can almost do anything. You could literally put it on kitchen scratch. I want to vote for president, send it over, and they have to count it.
I think one of the major points, though, is the stuff that we talk about with respect to elections. We actually get more pushback from Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the uniparty upper echelon, they all have the same talking points, which is the machines are fine. Note that all of the liberals back when Trump was in office in 2016 had a problem with machines until they didn't. But the right, after Biden was coming in, shockingly, none of them have. They all defend the machines. They all defend the dominions of the world. And I'm sitting there going, what blind trust to put in your faith into 3 or 4 corporations where you can't audit.
I just wonder if if it would matter, though, it like a lot of people I've spoken to anyway have just decided that there will be a conspiracy to screw Donald Trump or the Republicans, no matter what the mechanism is. So if we don't have machine voting, if we have in-person ballot voting, paper ballots, I have no confidence that people aren't going to say, "Oh, well, they screwed that one up too."
Well,
Like,
I don't disagree with
at
that.
what point, like it kind of gets a little silly, and you think like, all right, it's almost like playing a board game with a spoiled 9-year-old.
But
Like,
here's the difference.
You're never going to be right. It's like, come on.
Yeah, but here's the difference, because I agree that there's going to be a segment that if you're on the losing team, you're always going to bitch and complain. That's fair. But what I'm saying is that unlike other folks, if people question Trump's victory this past November, we would have been in favor of a complete audit.
100%.
We would have completely.
There's no need for it, though. I mean, yeah, there was no need for it, because I just don't think that anybody of any significance on the left questioned it. He won. He just won. That's all there is to it. He won in 2016. He won in 2024. He lost in 2020.
He won in 2020. He won in 2020.
Okay, I know you guys believe that, and that's fine. And I don't think there's any point in arguing about that, because it's been litigated over and over again. But
it hasn't been litigated, though. Patrick, it has not been litigated.
Right. Okay, I think it's going to be really boring to your viewers to have this argument with somebody when we both feel differently about. It's like arguing about abortion. It's like, come on, man, we know where we stand. We stand in different places, and I don't know why.
But it's facts.
Okay, that's fine. Look, I saw your film. I saw your film. I was at the film festival, and I know where you're coming from. I disagree with you. I don't think that makes you a maniac or a weirdo. I just disagree with you. You know what I mean? That's all. And I don't think it's worth it to relitigate all that stuff. But I will say that having gone through, having spent a lot of time with MAGA supporters over the last 6 years, especially with the Proud Boys and at MAGA rallies, I've met a lot of people who are very different. It's really wrong to try and throw MAGA supporters into the same bucket like a lot of liberals like to do. And I think you guys have shown that really well today in being very, very cordial with me. And I appreciate you having me on and having the conversation. I really mean that. I'm not trying to be condescending at all. I think this was fun. And I really, really do enjoy the conversation. I think you guys are both decent guys who I just happen to disagree with, is all.
I don't actually know that you disagree with us too much, but I will say this. I went to Washington, D.C. on January 4th. I think it was the 4th, 2021. For 2 weeks prior to that, I thought Eric Coomer acted alone on Dominion. Not 2 weeks before that, but a month and a half before that. When I came out and said Eric Coomer said this, I wasn't sure what I saw or what it related to till they came after my family, right? Now, I set out to figure out whether Dominion voting systems was going to be able to steal elections. That's what I set out for. And I wrote a model. Took all of the information I had, turned it on its side, squished it together, multi-state. And I was like, holy crap, I know how they're going to steal the election in Georgia for the Senate runoff election on January 5th. It was the 21st of December. I sent it over to a bunch of people in Washington, and they're like, that's a nice theory. And I was like, it's not a theory. It's how they're going to do it. It's exactly how they're going to do it. I built a model. They said, please come to Washington. So I did. January 3rd, I got grilled. January 4th, I got grilled. January 5th, I got grilled. Oh, January 5th at night, everything that I said, we didn't have any audits. We didn't have any audits, Patrick. There's no audits. Like, I'm not a full of shit guy. Like, I'm not a talk about something unless I know about it. I will not. I will never sit here and tell you that something's stolen because I want to be a petulant child. Like, I have to know something in order to say something. Right? People over those first 2 months tried to convince me, Joe, maybe it was a different Eric. So like, you need to say this, you need to say that. Because they came to my house 21 times, of which a handful with guns. I had to put bulletproof glass and thermal cameras on my home to protect my family. They went after my wife and my 2 kids. You don't try to cut the tongue out of the person that is lying. You cut the tongue out of the person that's telling the truth. On January 5th, I said, this is what is going to happen to the T on January 5th for that runoff election. At 2:00 in the morning on January 6th, I get a phone call that says, you need to get over here to the hotel right now. Everything that I said Everything that I said was going to happen on January 5th happened without exception. Without exception. I knew exactly when it was going to happen. I knew how it was going to happen. I knew the mechanisms by which they were going to flip the votes, and I knew how they were going to hide it. I built the model, sent it to them. They came over and they asked me the question, Joe, how did you know? And I was so angry at the fact that they spent 2 days grilling me and didn't do something about it that I said, I'm clairvoyant. I'm clairvoyant. It's obvious. I'm clairvoyant. I mean, I just kind of woke up and said, I had a horseshoe shoved up my ass, and I've all of a sudden started spitting out rainbows. I literally said that. And they're like, you need to go.
Is that your drag name? Clairvoyant.
Yeah, clairvoyant. I'm going to go put on a dress.
That'd be a good one, I think. Yeah.
But I mean, I went to the State Department when all this shit was breaking out, popping off at the Capitol. I was supposed to meet with Pompeo. I met with his counsel in a Faraday box. And this is how serious people took it. And this is how distinctly pinpointed I was in telling them how they were going to steal it. And they did it. I didn't have audits. I had nothing. I had the information that I was able to compile with Dominion to show how it was going to happen. That's it. That's all I had. And math. And I was like, here's how they're going to do it. And here are the 6 points of vulnerability inside the election. It happened exactly that way. If the elections are not rigged, I should never be able to predict the outcome of an election. I shouldn't. And like Ed Solomon put out information. This is where I know that if I spent any amount of time with you, first of all, you're the type of guy that you want to know. You want to know, right? If I spent any time with you and I was like, here, tell me how to explain this, you'd be like, holy shit. I'm not trying to red pill you. I'd be trying to black pill you at this point, right? Okay. But I sat with that counsel for Pompeo, and sweat is on his forehead. And he looks up at me, and look, I was a negotiator and I was very good. I was very good at what I did. And at that point, he knew that I knew that he knew I knew that he knew that the elections were stolen.
Yeah.
And I had to get out of there. And I'm talking to you, I was in that room with some very high level people, and I had to get out of there. I got out of there because now the paradigm has changed. It went from you guys don't know to you do know and you always knew.
Yeah.
And why did Pompeo sneak out the back door?
Yeah. Look, let me just, I'll button up because you're very kind, and I want to turn it back to you, Patrick, just saying thank you for,
thank you
for showing up. But I mean, to the extent that you see that this is an authentic conversation, we were both happier, more successful, but we were canceled for this fringe issue that's been reduced to kind of the parroting of left versus right. And it's really the only issue that I care about. And so I would love to have, an authentic conversation with you to the degree that you can poke as many holes as you want, because we think it's that important. And I think it's so important that because of all the issues that you don't agree with us on, that in the event that you get, your day with an election or a policy result that you can believe in, we all want to believe that it was derived through a process that no one is questioning. And that's really what we've been laboring for. But thank you for joining us on Untamed. And I hope that you come back and continue to push back.
All right. Thanks, guys. I sure do appreciate it.
Hey, Patrick, how do people follow you? Because I want them to follow you. And here's another thing. I voted for Obama the first time. I'm not a... Oh, boy. I did.
I know. God, help us.
I did. I wanted change. Sorry. I did. I grew up in the...
Yeah, no, I believe you. I voted for him twice. But anyway, vote for him a third time if Trump decides to run for a third. That opens the door for Barry. And then you guys are out.
At least he admits it's Barry.
Anyway, hey, I hate social media, so don't try and follow me anywhere. But I do appreciate you guys having me on.
Okay.
All right.
Take care, Patrick. God
bless you.
All right.
Whew. Good conversation. So here's one thing I will say about Patrick. If he doesn't know about something, he doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was like, oh, got it. You don't really know. That's not something you know about. So I do believe that when he went to MAGA rallies, people would talk about the tranny issue because the media talked about it. So the media created that narrative. Fox would talk about it. Right. But I also believe that if you start talking more deeply with those people, they understand economic policy. And the reason why I say that is because they can feel it. Like, people are not stupid. And the reason why you had it was too big to rig for President Trump is that people understood economics. They actually care about economics. And now everyone's pissed off, left and the right. Both sides, David, are pissed off equally about Doge. Right? You got senators, because we're destroying the elitist den. President Trump wants to do it, but the Democrats and Republicans equally do not want the cheese moved. Yeah. They don't want it moved.
Well, you know, the other thing about the MAGA rally, John Rich put out an interview about pushing back because Trump actually asked him, why am I getting booed about the jab? And John Rich actually told him, because I've lost loved ones. Everyone in that crowd has known someone that's been adversely affected. And so that's another example of people not working in lockstep. There's very few issues where Trump is going to receive a boo from a crowd, but the jab is one of them. And so that also shows you that there is kind of a commitment to the truth, but there is an implicit trust built in because, you know, right now the litmus test for me is if there is consensus amongst corrupt tyrants at the top of both parties, and what Trump is doing bothers both of them, sign me up. Because they have never worked for my interest or the interest of my family.
I agree.
And to the extent that, you know, more people on the left could see that, because you voted for Obama, but the reason why I left the party in 2016 is because I believed what people told me about Donald Trump. And until I did my own digging, I came around to it, and it's not to say that I agree with him on everything, but I've never seen someone that has actually accomplished things for me, for my family, to the degree that he has. And he's what I would call a pragmatic libertarian. Ron Paul was the philosophical giant in the room, but he didn't have the insights on how to bring it about. So when you bring in a Doge and you talk about auditing, you know, Fort Knox, and you're trying to figure out how to level the playing field, I've just never seen a president do that before. And we're not out of the woods yet. Yesterday's show was pretty much about how we're still kind of pissed off that we haven't seen what we both want to see.
Right.
But he's fighting, and we got to help him get to the finish line. So great show.
Yeah. I have some things that I do want to go over. We do want to go over with you that we have in the rundown. But I want to say this. We are still censored dramatically. I got a phone call. Okay. I know for a fact that there are people that are lobbying the platforms to stop our voice from going out. Throttle, limit their ability to actually have the video actually play. And I'm not talking just about Rumble and others, but it's a purposeful pushing of how do we stop people from watching the broadcast. And I know because I have other areas that are growing dramatically. Like people go to the website and watch the show because they can get a clear picture on the website. Mm-hmm. They can go watch it there. They can go through the audio version there. And, you know, the one thing I'll say about the Apple Podcast and Google Podcast, if you want to watch the audio, is at least they're not throttling us. But the amount of throttling that's happening on things that are supposed to be conservative or at least free speech platforms, is unbelievable right now. And so I know that we are having an effect on what's happening. It happened with the Scott Pressler interview. I got a thing saying that that it was copy struck. So they were taking it down from 2 platforms. I'm thinking to myself, what do we have on there with copy struck? So I appealed it. It's still an appeal. And you're going, how? So we know that they would rather put a Scott Pressler on there. It's, you know, that you have that there are people in positions of power that do not want truth to ever hit the American people. So we rely on you. We rely on you to do what you need to do in order to press the little truth button. We also know that they suppress the real number of people that watch it. And, if we didn't have radio stations and we didn't have BEK and we didn't have all these other places that we were pushing it, that we've had an amazing amount of success where it's grown dramatically, where it's almost become like a, I don't even know what to call it. What do you call it when you have it's like a group of people that that I'm in some other state and they're like, Joe. I'm like, what? So I just want to thank you, but I also want to tell you that we're not out of the woods yet. We're not even remotely out of the woods. If we don't get free and fair elections back, we're already not represented by people in either party that the people want.
Yeah. Well, that was where I was hoping to take the conversation. But we'll have to develop a relationship of trust with Patrick to get there. But he's obviously very smart.
Mm-hmm.
He actually reminds me of one of my best friends growing up in school who loathes my politics now. But smart guy. There's no doubt that he's a smart guy. But I think there are psychological barriers where people don't want to scratch and look under the hood because of the implications psychologically of what it means. Because when he opened up, his definition of what a liberal is, he starts with kind of the classical liberal talking points. There's a place for government, and okay, fine. But what about this government? Is there a place for this government that we've experienced? And to the degree that you find out for 30 years at least, we haven't had legitimate representation. You might have some people that get through. I'm not contesting that. But this isn't legitimate government, and it hasn't been. So if you end up taking that red pill, then your philosophical framework crumbles to the ground. And so I think there's going to be some resistance, because as Doge is taking a wrecking ball, it's taking a wrecking ball to the consciousness of many Democrats that have held up these departments and these things as good things. But now they're being confronted that millions of dollars of waste here, billions of dollars gone here. It wasn't for America. And at some point, like, the defense that's being offered is so ridiculous that, are you a credible person? And so I think he likes to exercise his intellectual chops. I mean, I think he likes to debate. I just want to slow down and say, okay, look, on these core issues, are you right or are you wrong? Because this is a really important thing that we're bringing up with whether or not our government even works.
I'm just not sure it does. I'm not sure it's redeemable from so many different perspectives, but I'm willing to have faith that, God can lead us through. But 3% of our population are psychopaths. And if those 3% get into positions of authority, which they have in our government, you deal with things that you have right now. So we have to recognize that these are sociopaths and psychopaths, and we have to do what we can to rid ourselves of those people. And unfortunately, it's going to be painful.
Yeah.
Right? But it's been so ingrained for so long that it is going to take an immense amount of faith and effort in order to get there, which is scary. So I want to, if I can go through, I want to go through a few things if we can, before we cut off. Number one, David, do you know how high the market went today?
Oh, I was in the room when you made an announcement. So,
all right.
Yeah.
So they were upset. Chicken little, chicken little, chicken little. Right? The sky's falling, the sky's falling, the sky's falling. The market's going to drop. Take all your money out. They created pandemonium panic, didn't they?
Yep.
Okay. So the stock market dropped over a 3-day period about 2,600 points. Right? And if you go back over the last month, actually, let's go back 6 months, because I think it's a pretty good indication, or beginning of the year. So from its high this year, the stock market is down 1,783 points, 4.1%. But today, a single day, nearly the single biggest day that has happened in Dow Jones history, it was up 2,962 points. 2,962 points. What do you think about that?
I don't know what to think of it. To me,
Market
I
manipulation?
will say that I've got my own, blind spots. The stock market to me is a big casino. I've never pretended to understand it. I love listening to you because clearly you've had some success. So what is the significance of that? I don't know.
Well, so the S&P went up even further. It went up almost 10% today. 474 points. Again, if you look at it over the last 5 days, it's down 0.65%, so it hasn't fully recovered. But if you look over the last 6 months, down 5%, like it's the year to date, it's down 7%. Now, if you understand what's going on with the S&P 500, what's in that index, you'd understand it pretty clearly as why. But over the last year, it's up 4%, 4.75%. So we're literally not in a bad place. But what this does mean is that the media is manipulating and the elitists are manipulating news coverage in order to manipulate the stock market. And someone just made a lot of money on the stock market.
Well, who made the
over
money?
a lie. But now they're saying that somebody manipulated and made a lot of money and that's why the market was pressed down and we do this tariff so we can continue to create havoc so we can make money. Which is just not true. It's not. It goes against the fundamentals. My issue with what's happening right now, and I said it yesterday, and you and I have the same frustration. If you're going to put tariffs out there, get rid of income tax.
Yeah.
Right? Get rid of it. Give back people money so they can raise their families. And what that would show, one of the things Patrick said is, well, I don't believe in trickle-down economics. Getting rid of income tax is not trickle-down economics. It's direct policy, right? It is people-directed policy. It's policy that affects all the people.
Yeah.
And
the beauty of it, Joe, is that income tax relief, it's not just provided to Republicans. So the leftist has more money in his pocket to allocate towards causes that he cares about. And so, it's one of those things where it really comes down to faith, because I think what Patrick would say if he was on the show would be that, he just has greater faith that the government can handle certain things that people can't. And the question I usually ask when people articulate that is, well, what is government made up of? People. There's no difference. It's just a different badge that you put on. And there's going to be incentives to protect and insulate yourself and exploit taxpayers. And to the degree that the historical record reflects this, there's no doubt that every single agency grows and grows and grows because you constantly have to justify your existence. And so you never see efficiency, ever. So, and the other thing I want to fact check Patrick on was we had a brief discussion on the criminal justice system, and he seemed to suggest that only case, every case that's taken to trial, the prosecution wins. And the average, this is actually in line with what I thought in state courts, you're looking at a conviction rate anywhere from between 70 and 80%. So it's not foolproof. Now you compare that to DC, which was my point. The J6ers had a 99% conviction rating. So it's very, very different than what we're seeing represented. So I do want to throw that out there. But you had some other things in the rundown that you want to hit on.
Yeah. So I want to go back to President Trump and the tariff deal. But before I do that, I want to talk about this one tweet for an update on Tina Peters, if we could. And this one was, it cost over 70,000. This is from Ken DeGraff, who's a rep here. It cost 70,000 a year to keep Tina Peters in prison for exposing the rampant vulnerabilities in Colorado's election system, at best certified to be only substantially compliant by the Secretary of State herself. Tina Peters.us was sentenced to 9 years, over 560,000 for sounding the alarm for whistleblowing. Colorado Dems changed the laws. SB 22-153, that's the SOS, flagrantly broke. So Weezer could kangaroo Tina into, Weezer's wiser, into prison to conduct Jenna and the Jared, keep her there as a political prisoner despite there being a shortage of space. Tina Peters inadvertently filmed a partial BIOS password and explanation of the vulnerabilities in the system after an election. Jenna published online over 600 BIOS passwords during an active election. Our Democrat governor sent a team to bypass all security measures during an active election to fix the election system. God withstands the cauldron. The gold standard is in prison. The dross is in the Denver. Can't be any more true than this.
Yeah. And not only that, you've got the same incestuous conduct where what do? You use the position of Secretary of State to now launch your next bid to cement the criminal activity. And so Jenna Griswold has now got her sights on a different position within the state of Colorado. And Joe, I think I've seen some stuff on X. What is Jenna Griswold running for now?
She's running for Attorney General.
So this
Colorado.
This vapid criminal needs to protect her criminality, and the best way to do that is to occupy the highest law enforcement position in the state of Colorado. It's no different than Adrian Fontes in Arizona as the SOS. So there's this entrenched cartel-like, they're not giving up. Let's just put it that way.
I'm going to tell you right now, I'm the first person to tell you that I do not want violence at all, because I've seen violence. But after what they did to parents, these pedophiles did to parents, these demons in leadership did to parents, I'm not sure you're not going to have parents that have decided that it's the only way. But let's get to President Trump. He, after putting massive reciprocal tariffs on all countries, most have come back ready to negotiate, except for China. Fear not, though, this is what Trump did when they disrespected him, and he came back with a gut punch to them. Based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world's markets, I am hereby raising the tariff charge to China by the United States of America to 125% effective immediately. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping the USA in other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. Conversely, and based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives of the United States, including the Department of Commerce, Treasury, and the USTR, to negotiate a solution to the subject being discussed relative to trade barriers, tariffs, currency manipulation, and non-monetary tariffs, and that these countries have not, to my strong suggestion, retaliated in any way, shape, or form against the United States, I've authorized a 90-day pause and a substantial lowering reciprocal tariffs during that period of 10%, also effective immediately. Thank you for your attention in this matter. Okay, so let me tell you what this means. This means that what he's saying is I'm hitting the pause button for the next 90 days for negotiations. But make no mistake, we are going to actually have tariffs. We're going to have reciprocal tariffs. We're going to start making money. Now, keep in mind, if we're able to doge $1 trillion off of the, I think they could do half. Mm-hmm. But if they could take $1 trillion off, we got to a place where it was consumption-based spending or taxes, I think that you will find that this country will be much more in line with what it should be.
Yep. Get rid of income tax to the degree that you're going to have a tax. People talked about, consumption-based tax, like a flat tax. Go to user fees, which was the biggest driver of funding of infrastructure. So if tolls, I'm not a big fan of tolls when you've got every other way that the government's taking money from you. But historically, if you want to use the road, you pay for the road. And that made sense. The founders understood that. But
that's not what's happening now.
it's not what, no, it's like every single thing under the sun to take money out of your pocket is happening. But one of the things that's interesting from this 90-day window is that I think he's also actively investigating what other countries can do for supply in place of China. So, I mean, you actually brought this up yesterday with Singapore. No need for any impersonations.
No need impersonation.
But what is it that you do that's better than China, so we can just cut them out of the picture? And so that's brilliant.
And it's, semiconductors and chipsets are manufactured in about 10 different places around the country. I should know that. I'm nerding out on you a little bit, but by pulling it away from China, you're also destabilizing. You see what's the effect that's happening on the Chinese economy, the 125% tariff. It's wreaking havoc on what they're doing in China, which frankly has to happen because China is, I don't want to say the Chinese people, but China is responsible for some of the turmoil we have here in creating, trade relations or alliances with people like George Soros, and destabilizing the U.S. So then you had Carolyn Levitt. She had this to say about President Trump. And when you punch at the United States, we're going to punch harder. Let's go ahead and play it. 2.
As you all know, the president just put out a statement announcing an additional tariff on China. The tariff on China will now go up to 125% because China imprudently decided to retaliate against the United States. And as I said at the podium yesterday, when you punch at the United States of America, President Trump is going to punch back harder. In that same vein, we have had more than 75 countries from around the world reach out to President Trump and his team here at the White House to negotiate better trade deals for the American worker. We have been overwhelmed with the amount of requests from countries around the world. I'll let the Secretary speak to that. We will continue with the tailor-made negotiations that I spoke about yesterday. In the meantime, there will be a 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs as these negotiations are ongoing, and the tariff level will be brought down to a universal 10% tariff. The Secretary here has been a huge part of the President's trade team, of course, and will continue to lead these negotiations moving forward to look out for the American worker, which is always President Trump's goal.
And then she schooled them on the art of the deal. This response was unbelievable. Play it.
And if I could just, excuse me, Raquel, if I could just add to what the Secretary said. Many of you in the media clearly missed the art of the deal. You clearly failed to see what President Trump is doing here. You tried to say that the rest of the world would be moved closer to China when in fact we've seen the opposite effect. The entire world is calling the United States of America, not China, because they need our markets, they need our consumers, and they need this president in the Oval Office to talk to them. And that's exactly why more than 75 countries have called, because the United States of America is the best place in the world to do business. And as the president has shown great courage, as the Secretary has said, in choosing to retaliate against China even higher. Elena, go ahead.
Here's another thought. I'm trying to think of the things that we do or that we have as a country that China doesn't.
I called it, by the way. Sorry.
And one of those things is beef because of our agriculture. It's not to say that China doesn't produce beef. They're number 3. But it's United States number 1, Brazil, and after China, it's India and Argentina. We've already struck a deal with Argentina. And so when you start, affecting food supplies, it's one thing to talk about, some of the electronic stuff, TVs. I'll take a steak and put that on the table before I'm worried about a smartphone for my kids. But I'm wondering if Brazil is one of those nations that is rushing to talk with the United States because China relies on American and Brazilian beef supplies to feed their people. And so as this drama unfolds, start looking at the essentials and seeing if there's more leverage there. And then, also keep an eye on treasuries. That was the other big issue that's looming in the background, is that there's got to be a refinancing with respect to interest rates, because our debt load is just so high, and Trump understands that. So it's interesting. I think we're all getting an education on economics in a way that it's this is history making stuff.
Yeah, no question. No question. And I don't think it's going to, frankly, I don't, you talked about tariffs on the automotive market. A vast majority of the cars that are used in America are actually made in America partially, right? So they're partially made in America at factories here, put together here. And so you're actually going to be charged a tariff if it's made in China on the part. So a part costs $2, goes in a car. See, people don't understand that if a car costs $60,000, nearly 25 to 30% of that is burden costs. 20% of that, another 20% of that is going to be labor costs. 10% is going to be warranty. 20%. You have to break it down based on what the value is of that particular car. So the tariff, the change in the car is going to be like 1%, 2%. It's not going to be 10%, 20%. That's not how it works. You're charged on the parts that you actually bring into the United States at the rate by which those parts are docked, like how you dock them here. Unless you have cars that are manufactured fully overseas, and then those cars are then tariffed at the rate by which that country is tariffed on the wholesale value of that car, not the retail value of that car. On valuations there. Peter Navarro did want to talk about tariffs. I know him and Elon Musk are boys being boys, but let's hear what he has to say.
Charles, this is one of the greatest days in American economic history we have had. I think we're going to call it the art of the reciprocal trade deal. And I'll tell you, all the nervous Nellies on Wall Street who try to undermine us consistently underestimate the power of the president to negotiate. What have we got here? We are at a place now where we have a broad-based 10% global tariff on. Well, we negotiate over the next 90 days with all of these countries who have come to us. And the mission, Charles, in these negotiations is to dramatically reduce our trade deficit, level the playing field, right, get rid of all the tariff differentials, get rid of all the non-tariff barriers. Dow 50,000. Charles, I've said this before, it's going to hit that. We're going to have a broad-based recovery in the S&P 500. Right.
So I think what President Trump's doing with China is actually really important. I don't see China, again, I'm a little different, okay? I'm a free thinker, so you can think what you want. Much like I don't believe that Russia is our enemy. I don't believe Russia is our enemy at all. I think Ukraine right now is our enemy. I think that they're an enemy to their own people, but I don't think Russia is. And I also don't think that China is. I think that you have bad actors there, like you have here, that have worked their way into an environment where they want to weaken. Like their whole goal, they wake up every day, is how can we destroy America? So what he's doing with China is resetting all of those things and creating an environment where it'll have a healthier disposition for us going forward. I don't think it's going to be as kind. But, China is trying to come into the United States with their car companies, right? And we're saying no. And so there's some things that I think we're going to have to look at when it relates to how we deal with China. Okay, so we're about out of time, but I do want to put a couple other things out there that I think are important. This is kind of we'll call it the funny stuff. If you're wondering what I feel about the Second Amendment, we skipped over the ads for today. We got some new ads coming in this week. But this is the right way to raise your kids, in my opinion. Let's go and play it. Bro. That's pretty awesome. And people have said, I can't understand, why would you let a little girl shoot a gun like that? So then when she turns 16, I don't have to show up and kill anybody. That's why. And if you're actually wondering how you should be fishing, you're going to get taxed to death for the fishing like this if you wanted to, and you're going to have to get a license. And I think the limit's 3 fish. And anyway, let's go ahead and play this. This is America. Okay, Apollo, why should you never fish that way? Yeah, so by the way, if you did fish that way, that bullet can come back and hit you. So the dynamics of that bullet, I've seen it happen. I've seen someone shoot at the water and the bullet go right past them. So shooting into the water is not a good idea like that. I wouldn't do it.
Use dynamite.
Use dynamite.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If it's good enough for Crocodile Dundee, it's good enough for me.
So we obviously, this is kind of an interesting part when we start talking about the you're not going to believe this. Crockett decided to talk about why we need immigrants. And this could probably be the most disgusting display I think I've ever seen. But Democrats are the party of slavery. So I kind of feel that we should, here, just play it.
So I had to go around the country and educate people about what immigrants do for this country, or the fact that we are a country of immigrants.
Right.
The fact is, ain't none of y'all trying to go and farm right now. Okay, so I'm lying. Raise your hands. You're not. We done picking cotton. We are. You can't pay us enough to find a plantation.
I know that's right.
I don't even know what to say. Do you think MS-13 is picking cotton?
No.
This is, the fact that she was not laughed out of that Baptist church should tell you everything you need to know about the retardation of Democrats. And by the way, she is a very articulate woman that is talking like a ghetto piece of trash, because she's trying to identify with people that she wants to manipulate, or she'd be talking like a normal person. I'm losing faith in humanity. And I just want you to know that China did actually reach back out to President Trump. I'm going to let you read this in your voice.
Sure.
Let's go put it up.
You real asshole, Donald. Courtesy of Xi Jinping.
You real asshole, Donald. Anyway, just a little bit of humor before we wrap up. And this, if you ever want to know what mental illness looks like, I just want to give you a firm picture of that. Let's go ahead and play that. I don't even know what to say about this. Let's go ahead and play this this craziness. This is nuts. Go ahead and play it.
Today we're confronting these anti-Trump and anti-Elon Musk protesters, seeing what they're protesting for. Let's see who we can get up here. Wow.
I just want to remind you of protest procedure. Don't film unless it's consent of anyone's faces. And we'd ask if you
We're
are
on public property, though, so we can film.
Are you part of the protest? Are you
Of
against?
course, I'm here. Hey, easy, dude. You don't have our consent to do this.
Don't touch me.
Don't
touch me!
Whoa,
Don't
easy.
touch me!
I didn't touch you for nothing.
You touched me! Don't touch me!
You want some money? He's touching
Can we
him.
get someone around these people, please?
Walk around them circles.
Elbows!
Easy, easy.
Elbows!
Easy,
Elbows!
easy.
No.
Easy.
You're not here to.
Wait.
You're not here for the protest.
Whoa.
Police!
What? Get the police. What did I do?
Don't feed the trolls!
No. Get off.
Elbows around!
Elbows around. Holy cow. Don't let me go. Ooh, what are you going to do?
Elbows!
Elbows. Man, we are peaceful. What the hell is going on out here? Watch, he can't keep running. What's going on, everybody? Look, we got a crowd coming. Dude, you touched me. Bro, get off me. He's touching me. I know I'm attractive, but I'm not that attractive to be following me like stink on poo. Come on, man, get off me.
Get off the property. Go.
Yeah, ma'am,
Go.
stop following me. Bro, what are you doing?
I'm part of security. He's not allowed to be here.
Part of no security. I could have brought a construction vest as well.
I thought you were trying to fight for our country.
I am fighting for our country.
Okay.
You guys, get off me.
Zone 5 agitators.
I ain't no agitator.
Yes, you are.
He's the one agitating me. Ma'am, I came in a suit to be respectful for you guys today. Oh, geez, are you moaning, sir? Drop the moan.
He's riding up on me.
He's riding up
on
me.
me. This is not
This
okay.
guy has a mask on.
I'd have punched that guy in his face already. I'm just telling you right now.
How you guys doing?
Fascists don't belong here.
Where's your sign?
How you doing, ma'am?
It'd be better if Donald Trump wasn't in president.
Look at him, look at him. Look at him. Grab their microphone, they freak out. Bro, these...
Help! He's hurting me! Help!
You look like a fool. You know that's what you are? A freaking fool. I am. I'm looking professional. Oh my gosh.
Help! He's touching me!
Bro, you...
Hey, you're breaking into people.
I'm not...
Help!
Let me take it.
What is going on? This guy's a lunatic. What are you guys doing? Keep your hands off me, little Antifa boy. Get the police officer these two. Officer, these guys...
I love this kid.
We did not touch you. We're safety. We're
Yes, you guys have.
Be here.
I have every right to be here.
You guys can go do what you're doing. Let him walk away. Don't engage.
He's not walking away, though.
I try to walk everywhere here, and you guys follow me everywhere I go.
Because you're shoving microphones in people's place.
I haven't done it once.
You've done it a million times.
I don't even know what to do. Good on him, but I would have punched that guy. Oh, he's hurting me. No, this is what it looks like to hurt you. In a peaceful way. I would have done it peacefully. And finally, because it never gets old. It never, ever gets old. I'm going to play this last little piece just for you.
I am signing an executive order making it legal to call your friends fags and retards if they are doing something faggy or retarded. Fags and retards, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to start calling our friends this again. And we will. We're going to call them fags and retards again.
David didn't get to see that one.
No, I saw it, but I just want Joe to know that he needs to rule out any political ambitions because I can see all kinds of.
Don't care.
Yeah, I know.
Don't care.
I know you don't care, but
I might run for governor.
Yeah,
but bro, we did not call our friends fags because they were gay. I mean, some of them ended up gay, admittedly, but it wasn't because we called them fags. And by the way, they didn't become retarded because we called them retarded. Okay, some of them did, but you called so many people retarded when you were younger that if you think about it, you heaped it out there, and that did not actually manifest in retardation.
Yeah, I can't remember ever doing that. As a kid,
Get out of here!
I was always
You didn't know that that's not true.
always feeding the poor. And,
Hey. Okay, so we'll see you guys later. We're gonna take off and I forgot we have to pray ourselves out, huh?
All right.
Should we pray for Patrick?
Yeah. Even though he may not want it, but we're gonna pray for him.
He's like, y'all Christians, right? Yep. We talked about fags and retards, and we're still Christian. Look, it's you have to have malice. When I was younger, it was no malice. We would like pick on each other all the time. And it was fun. and nobody got offended by it. I'm still wondering. I have that one friend that did turn gay. I wonder if it's because I called him a fag. I wonder if that actually happened. You think it's possible?
No comment. I'm going to be praying. The last thing I need to do right now is have this discussion and then enter into prayer.
Father God, just forgive us, okay? I'm sorry. We're just being irreverent, but we're not really being irreverent. We're just being funny.
Okay.
And a little irreverent. Okay, you pray to me. Pray.
Well, you make it harder.
I'll pray.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to be struck by lightning while I'm praying, but let me go ahead and pray us out.
All
Okay. Dear Lord, we thank you for just this conversation, and we do pray for Patrick. And ultimately, we don't believe in things like my truth or his truth, or we just believe in truth, Lord, and you're the author of that truth. And so, make your ways known to Patrick, and we pray for greater trust and development of that relationship to where we can all learn from one another. So we ask for a blessing upon him, and that you would give him your mind and your desires in your heart. And we pray that for everyone on this show. And we pray for that for the host here, that ultimately we take ourselves out of the equation and just think, what does the heart of God have to say about his people? Lord, we pray for our country and those that are involved in businesses and just this time of volatility, that ultimately we would like to see prosperity and accountability. And finally, Lord, we ask for a prayer for anyone that's watching the show, that they would find peace in you. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Remember, give us a thumbs up on your way out. You can text Untamed to 89517. If you're on the BEK network, I want to thank you for the emails that you're sending me. I don't even know how you got my email, but thank you. To follow us in other areas, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and more. Go ahead and go over there, give us a 5-star review. And remember that we are all in this together. Republican, Democrats. We just had a great conversation. I know Gammy was she was getting angry. I'm like, Gammy, slow it down there. We do have to have these healthy conversations. I think it was healthy. And frankly, we'll continue to have more in the future. So God bless you. And we'll see you guys tomorrow.